Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 990B, and today's date is June 6, 2016, and the title of the episode is Time is Ticking Down, Indicators Are on Track. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we know the government and many of its agencies, they've been spying on the American people, and we discussed many times before why they're doing this and the reason why they're doing this, because the people are a threat to their authority. But during a PBS town hall meeting, Obama was asked why he and Hillary want to control and restrict guns and ammunition to responsible gun owners. And during this town hall meeting, he went on about why they have to, do this with weapons and why we need to control it, but we don't want to take it away. And like I said, whatever he says is always the opposite. But he went on to say that he just came from a meeting in the Situation Room in which I got people who we know have been on the Islamic State websites living here in the United States, U.S. citizens, and we're allowed to put them on the no-fly list when it comes to airlines. But because of the National Rifle Association, I cannot prohibit those people from buying guns. Well, it's not because of the NRA, it's because of the Second Amendment. And second of all, you cannot put people on the no-fly list because they have the right to travel. These people haven't done anything wrong. Can you imagine if you just looked at something and they said, you're guilty? That's what the government is doing. Now, the president confirmed that someone from the government is noting everyone's browser history, determining which websites are not to be visited. And furthermore, if someone does visit the website for whatever reason, they get put on the no-fly list. So he confirmed that they're tracking and watching. Now, first of all, what are these websites? Why don't you have the freedom to look at whatever you want? And what is it the government's business if you haven't done anything? And do they have a warrant to surveil what websites people are visiting? Is there any oversight about what is going on here? And of course, the answer to all these questions is most likely no. So they're looking at every single person very closely. We know the Islamic State is a proxy force which is created by the U.S. government central bankers. And they keep telling us how people are looking and how people are, going to these sites and how people are on social media. Well, just because you look and you want to see doesn't mean you're guilty of something. And I thought in the U.S., in this country, you were innocent until proven guilty of something. Looking at something is not proving someone is guilty. So, we have a problem here with our government. They're trying to convince everyone that they have the authority to look at our information. They have the authority to put you on a list just because you looked at something. They have the authority to maybe stop you from buying a weapon because you looked at something. This is where he's going with this. Out in the UK, we see MI5. They were bulk collecting the public's data with no oversight. And we see that MI5 was allowed to escape regular scrutiny of its bulk collection of communications data by the watchdog charged with overseeing it. This is coming from a newly released confidential correspondent. The Privacy International has released documents. The documents detail that all of this was carried out in 2004 between the Home Office and the Government Communications Headquarters with Sir Swinton Thomas, the Interception of Communication Commissioner at the time. And we see at this point, many of the countries are doing whatever they want and violating the people's rights without getting warrants, without having oversight, without anything. And we see at this point most of the governments around the world, it's time for them to be removed. And it's time for people to replace our career politicians with real people that have real jobs, that care about the people, and it's time to get rid of the central bank. This is what it's all coming down to here. Because governments today are completely out of control, completely out of touch with the people, because they've been bribed, they've been blackmailed, they work for foreign governments, they work for the central bank, they work for corporations, and they want to keep their power. You have to remember, when the country was founded, there was no such thing as a career politician. They didn't get paid this enormous salary. They didn't have pensions and medical benefits. They were there voluntarily because they wanted to make the country better. They kept their other jobs. They went back to their other jobs after their term was over. But today, none of these people actually had jobs, most of them. They came out of school. They went right into politics. People padded, companies, central banks, governments padded their pockets with currency. And they lost all touch with everything else. And they wanted more and more and more. Well, it's time to end all of this. It's time to take the U.S. back. It's time for people in other countries to take their countries back. Now, out in Ukraine, we see that Lavrov realizes what's going on in Ukraine, and he's finally out there saying it, that the Ukrainian authorities are not ready to make progress on any of the Minsk II provisions that have to be coordinated with the Donbass region. And he's saying that everything in the Minsk II needs to be coordinated with the Lugansk and the Donetsk areas, between Kiev and those areas. And unfortunately, the Ukrainian authorities, they're not ready to make any progress, and they're not ready to push the Minsk II ceasefire forward. What they're really doing is stalling. And this is very noticeable when they were sitting at the Normandy format, and they're realizing that it's going nowhere. So what exactly are they trying to do? Well, they're never going to give in on the Minsk II ceasefire. We see things are building up in the eastern area with more and more drills, more and more military assets being brought into that region, more troops being brought right up to the border of Russia. We see there's more shelling going on in Donetsk and Lugansk, trying to provoke the region into doing something. And we see that for the last many months, the US, UK, and other nations have been in there providing them with military assets and training their forces. And when we look at all these indicators, it's because they're getting ready and prepared for something much, much bigger down the line. We know that Ukraine is now in league with NATO. So when we start putting these pieces together, we start to see the picture. We start to see what's going on here. President Obama, he is going to be going out to Warsaw next month to discuss economic issues and international security challenges. And he's going to meet with Donald Tusk and the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. And on the sidelines, he's going to be talking to the NATO summit in the Polish capital between July 8th and 9th to make sure everything is coordinated for what is coming up, most likely in August. And these are the things that we need to continually watch. We see Iron Wolf, which is a NATO drill in Lithuania. 5,000 people are taking part in this. And we see that Germany, Denmark, France, Luxembourg, they are going to be joining the second phase on June 12th. We're seeing French troops. They're going to be there also. And, of course, Poland. And they're continually doing this, provoking Russia. Because they're doing all of these things right on the border of Russia. And if you notice, it's a poke, and another poke. And they're hoping that Russia will do something. But at this point, we can see the actions of Russia. Russia is not falling into this trap. They realize what the U.S. is doing, and they've been holding back quite a bit. And this is why the U.S. continually moves their sights to different locations, like China, hoping to do something there in the Pacific, or maybe to North Korea, because that might be a better chance for something to occur. Now, a couple days ago, the German parliament adopted a bill recognizing the mass killings of Armenians by the Ottoman authorities in 1915 as genocide. And this was put into place most likely to blackmail Turkey. Because what we are seeing right now, Turkey was putting pressure on the European Union, especially Germany, about the refugee situation. Germany, at this point, looks like they're fighting back and saying, okay, you want to play this game? Then we're going to make it official that this was genocide. Now, of course, Erdogan is very upset about this. And he says that they'll never recognize the Armenian genocide. And he is saying that, okay, it looks like you're blackmailing us. Well, this is exactly what he was doing with the European Union and Germany. So they're both playing the game at this point and using whatever they possibly can to get each other to do things the other country really doesn't want to do. Now, Turkey wants the European Union and Germany and the rest of the nations to pay Turkey for not releasing the refugees, and they want billions of dollars. Well, the European Union, Germany, they don't want to do this. They want Turkey to keep the refugees. And they looked at the situation and said, you know something? Let's think of a way where we can stop this from happening. And they came up with this solution to say, okay, you want to play the game? Let's do it. And right now, Erdogan says that he might abandon Europe amid the crisis of what Germany is doing. Now, is he going to do this? Well, we'll have to wait and see, because he flip-flops back and forth. He is a dictator. And we are seeing that they're trying to make him out as the crazy one in this scenario. And they're hoping that the crazy one will start war, because it's starting to look like this whole thing's a setup, where we know the U.S. government central bankers there trying to provoke China, they're trying to provoke North Korea, they're trying to provoke Russia, and they need someone out in this area that's crazy enough to really push war. We've seen Turkey shoot down a Russian jet fighter for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I mean, they said, oh, it flew over the border, but we see Turkey flies into Greece's airspace many, many times, and Greece has never shot down the jet. Also, we see right at this point that this was done on purpose, and it looks like they're getting ready and prepared for Erdogan to do something else, because they can blame it on him. This is why the war started, and they want the other side to fight back. So we're going to have to watch this situation carefully, because we see it's building at this point. Now, out in Syria, we see the Syrian armed forces. They are moving into Raqqa, and we have to remember, the U.S. forces, the moderate rebels, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, the special op teams that are on the ground, well, they are there fighting also. And the U.S. and the moderate rebels and Russia and the Syrian armed forces, they're all fighting for the same exact territory. But there's no coordination whatsoever between them. I mean, this looks like a disaster waiting to happen here. And we're going to have to watch this very carefully. Now, Russia, they're going to provide active support for the Syrian army to prevent terrorists from seizing Aleppo. And Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says the United States knows exactly what we're going to do. They know exactly what's going to happen in Aleppo. And we've already warned Americans that we are going to bring in a huge amount of air support to fight back the terrorists. Now, we know that Turkey, the U.S., they've been filtering in terrorists, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, through Turkey, through Jordan, bringing them in right up to the area of Aleppo. And we know they've been bringing in a lot of military assets to this region. This is all in preparation for most likely what is coming in August, because all indicators right now are still on track. They're pointing to what is about to happen. We know we have one aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, another one is on its way, and we see there's a lot going on in this area. We see the UK, they have their teams on the front line in Syria fighting at the same exact time. Now, a lot of the European countries do have special op teams in Syria fighting. I know it's not reported out there in the corporate media. Well, most likely they're not going to report it just yet. This is just coming out, but we can see behind the scenes, we're seeing the US, the UK, and the coalition forces. They're all out there directing the terrorists on what to do. And the reason for all this is because they're getting ready for what is coming. And we know what's coming because we've been looking at the economic indicators. We've been following what has been going on, and everything is still a go. Nothing has changed as of yet. Now, people write in saying, is this going to happen definitely? Can anything change? Well, yes, anything can change. Look back in 2013. The U.S. brought in all the warships into the Mediterranean. They were ready to go into Syria with the sarin gas false flag, and Russia brokered a peace deal. The U.S. couldn't get any traction from Congress. They couldn't get any traction from the U.S., from the American people, to go into Syria and to invade, so they had to back off of it. And we see at this point that anything could happen, but right now, the indicators, the setup for what is coming is completely on track and ready to go. And we're going to have to watch the situation very closely as we approach the July month, and especially to the end of July, because we should see things accelerate and we should see certain things evolve during this period, where we see more troops, where we see more countries admitting they have troops on the front lines, where we see more military assets from the United States appear in Syria, where we see planes flying into the bases in Syria, bringing in more troops, bringing in more military assets. These are all the different signs. There's many more than this, but these are all the things we need to start looking at and watching very carefully. Because if we see this happening in July, going into August, we will then see something occur. And eventually, most likely to kick this off, they're going to have some type of an event. Now, what is that event? We don't know for sure what it's going to be, but we know there's a travel advisory throughout Europe about some type of Islamic State or terrorist action that's going to hit somewhere. We know it's also in Africa. It could happen in the United States. But these are all the indicators and everything that we've been watching that we need to continually watch and make sure we understand. Now, there was a very interesting op-ed article in the New York Times about the new vision of America and how the federal government is very small now and it needs to grow larger. And they were talking about the states, the state sovereignty. And they were suggesting the dissolution of the states because of an antiquated political structure of the 50 distinct states, which is holding back the grand fantasy of the central planners in Washington, D.C. Well, we know what this is all about. They want control of the entire country. When I say they, it's the central bankers, the U.S. government, the elites. They want control, and they don't want the states to have the control, because when the country was found, the founding fathers actually really gave the power to the states, not to the federal government. The federal government was the administrators. that carried out the orders of the states, of the people. What they're trying to do here is they're trying to move the power to the federal government and get rid of state sovereignty. And this is why they can continually say antiquated or, it's obsolete. And what we're seeing right now is their play to try to take all the power at this point. As the system is coming down, as everything is collapsing, they'll be making their move. And this is exactly what they've been doing. And if you look from everything that we've been talking about, taking control and taking the power away from education from the states. Did they do that? Yes. How'd they do that? Well, all the funding now comes from the federal government. They threaten schools now with taking away the funding. Police departments. Well, they're getting a lot of their funding from the federal government. If you do not follow what we do, we will remove your funding. So you can see they're already making a play. They've been doing this for quite a while. And like I said, they do this very slowly, very methodically, so no one realizes what's going on until it's too late. And as this system collapses, their play will be to try to take away the rights, take away the sovereignty, to take full power of everything. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.